Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll jump right into our certification, item 2.02, certification of closed session in accordance with Virginia, Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A. Lyndon?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: to discuss ongoing personnel matters under investigation pursuant to the personnel exemption at 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, and to discuss the investigation of a student matter pursuant to the scholastic record exemption at 2.2-3711A2 of the Code of Virginia. And I move to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Item 2.03, action from closed session.
I'll go first. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the religious exemptions request for students 2021-2022, students 18, 19, and 20.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Do we have any other action from closed session?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we uphold the superintendent's decision in personnel case 2021-21 and authorize the chairman to issue a written decision setting forth the rationale of the school.
We have a
Second.
second, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Just want to welcome everyone to this Thursday, September 23rd, Roanoke County School Board meeting. And if you wouldn't mind standing and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item 4, announcements of changes in the agenda and approval of agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Item 5.01, recognition of Load the Bus participants. Mr. Lionberger. Man of many hats. Welcome. And many headsets, right.
My Mickey Mouse tie.
Here we go. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And actually, let me go get the presentation started.
See?
So again, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As you know, every year we hold our annual Load the Bus School Supply Drive in partnership with Walmart, with Roanoke City Schools, Salem City Schools, and in more recent years, Craig County Schools. And to give you a little bit of history, we're kind of celebrating a magical year this year. This is year number 20. We've had it a few extra times, but there's, especially like last year, we're kind of thinking we're just going to forget last year. So we have seen a lot of success with Load the Bus. What was Pack the Bus when it first started around the year 2000 in a partnership with Q99. And when I came in 2007, we started tracking how much we raised and how much we collected in school supplies. This is an estimated retail value, so these numbers are not 100% precise, but this is an estimate. And as you can see, from 2007 to about 2013, we collected somewhere in the neighborhood of about $4,000 to $5,000 a year. In 2014, we had a little bit of a change. Q99's participation went away, and we rebranded the event to Load the Bus. And the partnership with Roanoke City became much, much stronger as we kind of reconfigured the event for 2014. As you can see, we had a little bump, but it really went crazy the following year when we switched to a 3-day event as opposed to a single day. And as you can see, we nearly doubled that year. And since that year, 2015, we have been slowly increasing every little bit up until 2019. And I'll tell you, if you'd asked me back in 2007 or 2008 if we would be collecting more than $20,000 worth of school supplies, and by the way, this is Roanoke County only. This is not Roanoke City or Salem. This is only Roanoke County's numbers. But if you told me back then we'd be collecting $20,000, I said, you're crazy. There's no way. But as you can see, 2019, we topped out at $22,800. 2020, of course, as we said, we did have some donations, but it was a COVID year. We're going to kind of forget about 2020. But when we came to 21, we met with the Walmart staff, and we said, okay, we're back, and we're going to do this for real. We're going full throttle. And I believe it was Shannon, Shannon was you that said, let's go 25,000. Let's shoot big. And I said, okay, I really didn't know if we'd make 25,000. I mean, as you could see from the previous, we were pushing to get to top the 22,000 from 2018 when we did 2019. But you know what, 25,000, let's go. And so we went. And so there's a few photos from this year's event. We had a great kickoff event over at the Salem Walmart. I want to thank Salem for hosting us this year. The Glenver cheerleaders were there. Glenver Drumline was there. We had Dr. McClung join us to welcome folks as well. And then we got into the real deal, and we started collecting supplies. And they just started coming in and coming in and coming in. In fact, Mr. Moretz and I spent an hour or two on a very hot, sweaty bus at Clearbrook. It gets warm on those buses in early August, and I think many of you can attest to that personally. Then came Monday. Now, Load the Bus, as you know, takes place during tax-free weekend, which is traditionally the first Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of August. But then there's Monday. Monday's called Unload the Bus, and that's a day that makes your arms hurt. All the stuff that's on the buses comes in, and this year we took it into the gym, and I'll tell you, it looked like a Walmart that had gotten nuked, because there was school supplies everywhere. And so through a lot of work with a lot of help here at Central staff, we started sorting everything and getting it all put together. And ultimately, with some help also from Staples as well, ultimately we got down to a lot of these. If you were walking the halls of Central for the last month along the main hallway, you saw this almost every day. Boxes and boxes and boxes, and all of them had this same label on there, Load the Bus, please deliver to your counselor. And I can tell you, I handle probably most of those boxes, and I'll tell you, my arms are feeling it. So the question then becomes, how do we do? I've had a lot of people asking that. I don't even know if I can, I'm just blown. I'm not even going to tell you. Just take a look. Look at that. $29,648 in estimated retail value. And again, this is Roanoke County alone. Our friends over at Roanoke City, they do their own measurements, and they've said they're well over 20,000, and they still have more stuff to count and more stuff to log. So none of this happens, though, without a tremendous amount of help and support. And so tonight, we're here to recognize folks that have come and helped out. And so first of all, thought we would start off with our drivers, who they spend hours. And these folks are awesome. You know, as Mr. Moretz knows, and several of you have been out to these things before, those buses get hot. I mean, really, really warm. And our drivers are out there, and they are doing this every single day for 3 days. And so we'll start off. Let's see who we have first here. Donna was over there. Donna right here. Donna was over at Clearbrook. So hold on, let me go get it.
Donna and Sarah. So he murdered my name. What else is new? Sarah Moretz.
Right there. All right. Thank you. And then we also had, yeah, absolutely, thank you. So Melissa, did Melissa was able to join us? I don't think. No, okay. So Melissa Welsh, Chris Hogan, and also, it was our last, it was, yes, Barry Dudley. And they all came and helped out I'll tell you, it just takes a ton. But, as I said, this also is a really special year. We're recognizing 20 years, and we absolutely, positively could not do this without Walmart. And so we have the distinct honor of having 3 of our Walmart representatives with us tonight. So we will start with the Bonsack Walmart and Annette Verplanken, who was the manager up at Bonsack.
No, no.
That's a good thing. I don't know if I could take a picture with that West Virginia hat.
And so these are all plaques that say, thank you for 20 years of support to the Bonsack Walmart for our partnership with Lowe's Bus. Get all 4 members together here. Mike, step to that side. All right, here we go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we did not have a representative from Clearbrook. Let me go to the mic here so folks are watching. We did not have a representative from Clearbrook, but this also was kind of a sad year for us in Load the Bus at Clearbrook. We lost Aaron Robbins, who was the Clearbrook manager at the Walmart store in Clearbrook for, a long time. And he also was a member of our Education Foundation, and so was a huge supporter of Roanoke County Public Schools. And so, we felt like we needed to honor Aaron tonight as well, and in memory of him. So we'll get that over to the Clearbrook Walmart. Next up, we have the Salem Walmart and T. Jordan. And also the Valley View Walmart with Shannon Moore. So, Mr. Chairman and board members, the good news is we've raised $29,648. Walmart, how are we going to top that? I'm wondering. Now I'm looking at how I'm going to top that for next year. So we'll have a big bar to cross for next year. But you know what? We will get there and we will cross it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and thank you, Chuck, for all of your support. We've had a lot of help throughout the years. And I know Mr. Kraft's going to speak here in a second. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank him. He's been, helping out with Load the Bus for 20 years. So we appreciate that. So thank you very much, Mr. Kraft. So that's a good segue into item 6.01, hearing of citizens and delegation. And first up is Mr. Chris Kraft. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moritz. As a founder of the Load the Bus, which was Pack the Bus, I also want to thank Walmart, because from day one to now, we couldn't have done it without Walmart. They've been a big supporter. If it's ice water or anything, paper towels, something, Walmart's always there, and they deserve the biggest recognition. These managers work hard, but on that weekend, they work extra hard. And some weekends, when we did it, they had to put up with me. So, but I also want to thank y'all, even though Chuck didn't give me a certificate this year, but I want to thank y'all, because without y'all, we wouldn't need this. I've been doing it for 20 years, not for anything. With Dr. Bishop invited me a couple times to come be on TV, but I didn't do it for that. I do it because I have kids. And I will continue to do it till they put me in a box and carry me away, because working, I hated I had left Roanoke County schools, but working with the kids I do now, I see what all this goes toward, and it just makes me cry. So I want to thank y'all for everything that y'all do to support me and Chuck every year with Fill the Bus.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you. Comment. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chris. I know you're there all the time. I was over there and I said, what do y'all have? And you said, well, they brought us out some water. So I went in and talked to the manager and I said, can't you get them some food out there? And so he was going to arrange and make sure that they got food out there. So I know Aaron did a lot when he was there. He was there when we cut the ribbon on Walmart there in Clearbrook. But we appreciate your efforts, Chris, because you're there all the time and dedicated, and we really appreciate that.
All right. Next up is Christopher Sullivan. Welcome. So, you
All
just
right.
could just state your name and address for the record?
Sure.
We appreciate it. And
So my name is Christopher Sullivan. My address is 6549 Tallwood Drive in Roanoke. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. It's good to be here. Actually, what I think is really cool is I finally see Mr. Lineberger in person. I've been listening to his voice for 6 years on the phone. I'm the father of 2 children at Oak Grove Elementary, aged 8 and 10 years old, and I've been a physician here in Roanoke for almost 8 years. Last year, my wife and I chose the virtual option for our children. But by the end of the year, we had been encouraged by how the teachers, the staff, the administrators, and the children handled the challenges of the pandemic. So, late this summer, we decided to bring our children back into the classroom after the school board voted to implement a universal mask mandate in the schools. We would not have done so otherwise. I'd like to thank the board for following the guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatricians, Pediatrics, the Virginia Department of Health, and the Centers for Disease Control. These are experts who have dedicated their professional lives to studying and improving our health. These are the experts that I trust, that I turn to as I help my patients and family navigate the pandemic. Expert guidance will continue to evolve. And while it hasn't been and it won't be perfect, it has a strong evidence-based foundation. We know that layered protection against COVID-19, masking, distancing, ventilation, hygiene, vaccination is simple, safe, and effective. It is even more critical now with the Delta variant in circulation. Children transmit the coronavirus. Unvaccinated children are now more than 4.5 times likely than they were earlier in the pandemic to be hospitalized with COVID. And in the 0 to 4 age range, it's 10 times more likely. 23% of hospitalized kids wind up in the ICU. Even if we assume for a moment that only 1% of kids with COVID get hospitalized, hospital beds aren't allocated like desks in a classroom. There isn't one per child sitting available. The ratio isn't even close. We've seen in other states without mask mandates or relaxed school mask mandates how pediatric health care has been pushed to the crisis point. We're in an election season, surprise, surprise, but let's not let politics push us down that path. Not now and not in the future. The pandemic mission of the school board should be to ensure the health and safety of every child so that high-quality, in-person learning can continue. Becoming cavalier about precautions will only increase the rate of classroom closure and will do nothing to ease the disproportionate burden of COVID-19 on our most vulnerable children, those that really do have severe health conditions or demographic hardship. So far, the school board has risen to the occasion by recognizing the facts of the pandemic and adhering to evidence-based standards, even though some think that doing so is wrong. But when it comes to pandemic health precautions, as with many other things that we do, what we do and achieve in our public schools impacts what we can do elsewhere in our lives. Each day, as a doctor and as a parent of children who cannot yet be vaccinated, I think about the safety of my family. I think about the health of my vulnerable patients, the well-being and availability of my staff, the staff at the hospital, who have to take care of all of the COVID patients and also attend to everything else that has to be done for our patients. And I think about the limited immune function of every baby that I deliver, and then that goes home into the community. My expectation, which I like to think is shared by most parents, is that each of you and any new board members that follow will be deliberately nonpartisan in your work, that you will continue to follow the evolving guidance of our medical and public health leadership, not because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do. It's what's best for the health of our community and of our children. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. All right. Item 7.01, report by Student Advisory Council. Welcome, Taylor. I don't know if we even have much tonight, do we?
No. Yeah, my car decided to tell me that my key fob was dying, like when I was on the interstate, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. So, yeah, car troubles, I'm sorry. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. I'm Taylor Holoski, and I'm the Student Advisory Council Senior Rep for this school year. As I said last school board meeting, we had our annual reception to meet our newest 8th grader representatives from each school. Our council has not met again since then, so I have nothing to report for you guys. Thank you all for your continuous support of the Student Advisory Council and allowing the SAC the opportunity to give our input. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. We have item 8, our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Greenway. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Item 9.01, we have a warehouse surplus approval. Mr. Lowe? It's going to be hard for me to take you seriously with that mask on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here this
I
evening.
bet it is.
Members of the board, Dr. Nicely, thank you for the opportunity. I'm here looking for approval.
Approval of that?
Oh, that's he's never looked better, I don't believe.
This is because a guy believes Tech's going to win a few games a year. And they disappoint me every year.
I'm sure it'll come back around sometime. I'm here to ask for approval for a surplus. Most of the equipment that we have down at the warehouse in this surplus request is nutritional equipment for kitchens. We do have a few things that are that would go back into the general fund, like tire changer and some vacuums and buffers and scrubbers. So I'm just here asking permission so that we can go ahead and put this on the public surplus website.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lowe? All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Okay. Second.
Second, all right. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Item 10.01, request to accept state funding for purchase of albuterol and valve holding chambers. Mrs. Harmon, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Nicely. Per Superintendent's Memo 240-21, the 2021 Appropriation Act includes one-time state funding to support the purchase of albuterol and valve holding chambers in Virginia public schools. A total amount of $120,000 is being allocated based on the total number of school buildings in each school division. Roanoke County Public Schools should receive $1,670.96 to help purchase these items. Staff recommends approval of the additional state funds and appropriation of $1,670.96 from the grant contingency. Do you have any questions?
You just repeat those numbers one more time for me.
We are set to receive
What are we receiving from the state again?
$1,670.96.
So a little over 1,000, and how much are we paying to purchase all of these? Do we know yet?
We don't know yet.
Is it safe to say it's going to be more than what we're receiving from the state?
9 times out of 10.
Okay, just checking.
It's kind of like the EpiPen. We're required to have them in schools,
No, I
and
mean,
this
I
is
think
our
it's a great
allotment.
idea, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Mr. Ray?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Harmon, what is the, do you know much about this? I mean, who's going to administer this?
School nurses, similar to our EpiPen. Several years ago, we had to stock EpiPens in all of our schools with our school nurses. It's very similar to that. We now will stock albuterol.
And do you know if there's any regulations, maybe Dr. Nicely, that are procedures that you follow? Because, you know, I read a little bit about this online, and if it's not administered properly,
Our nurses will be totally following,
No other-
and it would have to be in a student's health plan already,
no other person would administer any of this.
or in, yeah, I
Well,
won't
we
say
do have
ever.
backups. We do have staff trained
We
if
have
a nurse is
designees
unavailable.
when the nurse is not available that have been trained in any medication implementation.
I was just, you know, looked online, it was pretty serious if you don't know what you're doing when you administer this type of medicine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Item 10.02, we have COVID update. Dr. Stegall, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. So we're going to give you an update on our COVID numbers for this week. Really haven't changed a whole lot since our last report. This is the daily count as of September 22nd, yesterday, and you can see the trend is still on the way up. We're not seeing any decrease whatsoever. Number of cases reported in Roanoke County are up to 69. This chart right here shows the transmission rate in Roanoke County, and we're at 13.2% positivity, and you can see that we're plateauing at high and showing no trend of coming down. New cases per 100,000, this is a 7-day average. This is showing September 12th through the 18th, and you can see the trend there is we're still high and not trending down. So this is off of our dashboard, and these are the number of positive cases in our school. And you can see we have 3 areas there, 3 of our schools who have spiked high. Hidden Valley Middle is the one in the middle, and that's the one that we closed 6th grade because we were having such high numbers. Over on the right, you'll see that's Northside High School. We just recently have had lots of cases there, and we're monitoring that one very closely. And then we have Cave Spring High School. That outbreak is it's specialized to one team, one cheer team. So they had 10 positive cases just on one team. So that's the reason Cave Spring is looking high there for case numbers.
So we closed down, now correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, we closed down Bonsack for 3 cases, right?
Well, yeah.
That's pretty much.
On the 4th one we did.
Okay, so the 4th. So we've got Cave Spring High with 16 cases. We've got Hidden Valley Middle with 15, and Northside High with 18.
So it has to do with transmitting in the classroom. So in Bonsack, we had 3 classrooms in a grade level, and they were transmitting inside the classroom. Some of these positive cases, for example, at Hidden Valley Middle and Hidden Valley High, they're all over the school, right? It's not in one classroom. So what closes down a classroom, it's not the number of cases, it's the number of cases that are transmitting to other kids in that classroom.
Let's say we had 3 cases in Bonsack in one class. Why would we shut down the whole school when we've got more grades in an elementary school, and yet we've got 4 grades in a high school and that many cases in however many grades?
We were at 4 when we shut down. I think we jumped to 12 by the time after we shut down the school. We kept getting positive cases coming back, which shows me we made the right decision, because if those kids would have been in school, they would have transmitted more. I do feel like we made the right decision with Bonsack, simply
But
because.
we're not going to make that decision with these schools.
Well, the reason we haven't closed down the Northside High School 9th grade yet is because we have quarantined, what is that number?
51.
We just quarantined in one day. There was,
What we're doing, but all I'm saying is it just doesn't seem consistent to me.
it's not going to be consistent because every single case is different. So the way we shut down a classroom is it has to transmit. So remember when I showed the example, this person has COVID, and these people right here, it transmits. If none of these people get COVID, we're not going to shut down that classroom. So we could have one positive case in 100 classrooms and never shut down the school because it's not transmitting. If this person is positive and transmits to that person and then transmits to that person, we're going to shut that class down because clearly it's transmitting in this classroom. That's what makes the difference. It's not the number of cases, it's the transmission that's happening in the actual classroom. And so then when we have, let's say we have to shut down this classroom, the classroom next door has a positive case, they're transmitting, we shut down that classroom. Then we go over here, same thing, now we have a whole grade level we've had to shut down. If that same thing happened in every grade level in a school, then we would have to shut the school down.
Keep in mind, I'm happy that we got these schools open. Makes no sense to me, but.
It is very confusing. We take every case individually, and we work with the health department every step of the way. So they're the ones who make the recommendation. And so with Northside High School, we're holding right now, simply because today we didn't get a positive case back at Northside High School because we've quarantined so many kids. We've quarantined 30% of the ninth grade. So what that means is 30% of those kids are now out of the building. So if they did contract COVID, they're not there transmitting. So hopefully that's going to keep us from spreading it. If we continue to get cases, we're going to have to go back and shut down the ninth grade.
So in that case, we have cameras in the classroom so these kids can still learn?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So those are those three cases. Positive cases by date. So you can see there, 3 days ago, we popped up to 41. That is the highest number we have had since COVID started. So you have to keep in, 21 was the highest last year, but keep in mind we have all of our students back in school, so that's why the number's up to 41. So that's the highest number we've had to date. And of course, numbers are still running high. Okay, in-school exposures, you can see clearly in those three schools that we mentioned, the exposures jumped up because the cases jumped up, therefore the exposures jumped up. That's the reason. You can see the other schools have cases too, but exposures, but not to the same extent. Quarantines, you can see that quarantines are, of course, remaining steady. We still have, we're pushing 500. We've been there for a while, so all of these kids are receiving remote learning. Some additional measures we've had to take, we had to shut down Hidden Valley Middle School one class, and then we kept getting positive cases out of the other classes, so then we had to turn around and shut down the entire sixth grade. So sixth grades at Hidden Valley Middle is out, and then they will return on Monday. So they've been out for a week. As long as we don't continue to get cases back that are positive, they will return on Monday. Athletic impact. So Cave Spring High School cheer had to pause because of positive cases. Cross country paused last week, but now they are back in to activity. Hidden Valley Middle had to push a football game back because of the high quarantine numbers. Williamburg High School had competition cheer, and the practices paused there with Williamburg Middle as well. So it has impacted cheer quite a bit because, of course, it's indoors. So we're having some problems with cheer across the board. So to talk about those COVID numbers at Northside, we had 8 cases. There were 51 exposures. 27 additional kids were exposed. However, they were vaccinated, so they didn't have to be quarantined. So that just shows you the high number of kids that we have contact traced at Northside to determine the rate of transmission. So that's in 2 days. That's how many kids had to receive phone calls and say that they had been exposed, and now they're transitioning to online learning. So we are watching Northside ninth grade very carefully. We did get a positive case today, but it wasn't ninth grade. So we're watching it to make sure. We're hopeful that by getting these kids out of the building who have been exposed, if they happen to turn positive, they're not going to be transmitting. We can shut this down quickly and get the kids back into school without having to shut down the ninth grade and even more grades. Right now, we don't have any other problems throughout the rest of the school. It's just contained to ninth grade. We have a few cases here and there, but there's not a problem other than ninth grade. Part of the problem with the ninth grade is we've tracked it back to, there was 3 classrooms, and these kids follow a very similar schedule. So in this classroom, one day, because we usually track for 2 days, the kids were in a seating chart. The teacher just decided to change the seating chart, put the kids in a different seating chart. Now they were exposing other kids in that seating chart, right? So then they go over to this class, similar group of kids, exposing a whole nother group. So basically what we had to do was quarantine 3 entire classrooms. So that's why the numbers were so high. That's all. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Wright.
Chairman, Dr. Scott, in the example that you used just a minute ago, the folks that were around them, let me understand, did you quarantine them?
Yes,
So they were actually gone home on virtual?
yes.
And
Yeah.
how far do you go, within so many feet that they were? or-
Yeah, so CDC now allows us to do anything outside of 3 feet. So in the classroom, if they were less than 3 feet, they're considered exposed, so then they are asked to quarantine. However, of course, if they're vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine. So, we had 78 kids who were exposed, but 27 of them didn't have to quarantine because of vaccinations. So yeah, you're right. Anything less than 3 feet. So that involves every classroom that they attend in high school. That's going to be, at least 6 to 7 classrooms. Now they're on the bus. So every kid that's sitting beside them, that would be an exposure. If they turn around and talk to the person behind them on the bus, that's another exposure. It could be the person beside them on the bus. That's an exposure. And then if they're on the athletic team, if there's exposures there, we have to trace that as well. So that's how the numbers get up very quickly.
Any other questions?
So I just want everybody to hear this because I've already asked Dr. Nicely this question. But they don't have to quarantine if they're vaccinated.
Correct, as long
Even
as they're
though-
not symptomatic.
Even though we know now that it can go, vaccinated folks can get it. Maybe not as bad, but they can still get it.
They can. If they're showing symptoms, our nurses call those who are vaccinated and say, you have been exposed. What you need to do is for 2 weeks, you need to watch symptoms. If your student starts to show symptoms, they are not to return to school and give us a call. Then they ask them to go to be tested. So the nurses are telling those vaccinated parents that they need to watch the students for 2 weeks. Ideally, they're supposed to wear a mask for 2 weeks. That's what the health department recommends, just to be safe, if they've been exposed and are vaccinated.
For those that are vaccinated, are we requiring that they show proof of vaccination?
So our nurses have access to vaccination records, so they ask them if they've been vaccinated. And at this point, for example, Charlene was she looked up every single one of those kids last evening. So she can go into the vaccination records and can see those, because school nurses have to check all school vaccinations, so they see those records. They're not in there, and the parent questions it, because there are cases where the vaccination records aren't up to date, and the parent says, we have had COVID, and it's not in the system, then we do ask for the vaccination card. So they are definitely checking that.
Any other questions for Dr. Stegall? Appreciate the
All right.
update. I know
Thank
you've
you.
done that a couple of times, the visual of why we, closing a classroom is very helpful, and I think pretty easy to understand. So thank you. All right. 11.01, report by Roanoke County Public Schools Superintendent. I guess.
Thank you,
Would be you,
Mr.
Dr.
Chairman.
Nicely.
Just briefly, I just want to, show my appreciation to all the work that, Dr. Seagal is doing with all this. As you can hear how complicated this is, and everything that's being done at the school level with our, principals and the nurses, and they're working, all hours of the evening and the weekend trying to, trace all this stuff down. It's a huge task. And we just can't, say thank you enough to all the work they're doing. Same thing for our teachers, the classroom, the counselors, everybody that's working with our students. So the undertaking that we're trying to do to keep our students in school, which is the right thing to do, keep them there every day. They're in these conditions. It's compulsory attendance, but they're there. We're trying to catch the students up for unfinished learning, the gaps in learning that we know individual students have. Trying to move forward with learning, trying to attend to their social emotional needs. On top of that, dealing with frequent absences. It's a monumental task that our schools are facing. And the more I read in the newspaper about other places entire school divisions having to shut down because of, staffing issues and so forth. I'd be remiss not to pause and just give a shout out and a huge expression of appreciation to everything that our school staffs are doing to keep working with our students and keeping us moving forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, 12.01, reports and inquiries of board members. Mr. Wyman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief, but I do have 2 or 3 things I want to share. One, I received an email from the Western Virginia Workforce Development Board. I think maybe you all did as well. And they canceled, or not didn't cancel, they postponed the meeting that they were going to have this coming week to bring business leaders and education leaders together to kind of talk about this whole thing with workforce development. I was really looking forward to that. The timing seemed perfect in terms of what we're trying to do with VOTEC. It's going to be rescheduled for the spring. I'm not going to be on the board, but I would encourage the board, to be a part of that. That's the kind of information that we can share with those members of the committee that we put together to determine, what might be appropriate at the new Burton Center. And I think that it would behoove us to understand the business community as much as we can as we're making those decisions. Secondly, and I know this is a little early, but sometimes it takes a while to get people together. November is Take Your Legislator to School Month, and we've done that in Roanoke County before, where we've invited them in, toured facilities, and things of that nature. It's extremely important to me right now because we're trying to develop the support that we're going to need for capital improvements, and especially the Burton Center. Having them on site so they can see and provide additional support, whatever kind of support they can provide, would certainly be appropriate. So I would encourage the board and certainly the superintendent and staff to develop a robust program to get as many in to as many sites as possible during that month so that they have the benefit of our expertise. The last thing I want to talk about briefly is interim reports and the reports on the gap reports that the students took the assessments. The gap assessments are available now, and there was a notice sent home. I think I talked to Ben today. I think he said it went out last week. The state did not do us any favors with the information that they provided us to provide to parents. Last year, we asked parents to be teachers. This year, we're asking parents to be teachers and testing coordinators. Another year, they're going to be asked to be administrators so they can actually run the schools from home. But the important thing is that those reports are out there now. They're a little bit educationese with regard to the data that the parents are receiving. And I would encourage parents, if you have questions about those reports and your child's progress, schedule an appointment to meet with your teacher, the school administrator, to help allow them to help you to understand where they are. There's a lot of data there for teachers. On the professional side, it's great because every student gets a report, and every student is identified with the exact items that were tested that they were not able to complete, which is invaluable in terms of being able to provide intervention. It can be targeted, and it can be targeted not only to what you've done in the past, but how you're going to do it for topics that are coming up. So I would encourage parents, if you have questions, teachers are your first line. They're going to be there with the students every day, helping them to overcome those gaps. I would encourage you to schedule that appointment, get in, find out, and work together. Support each other in what we're trying to do for students. We said 2 months ago that we can get kids back in school, and we can. But keeping kids in school and keeping them in that learning cycle where it's focused, it's very targeted, that's extremely important at this point. And I think that parents that have questions need to have those questions resolved as quickly as they can with the people that are directly involved, the teachers and the building administrators. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wyman. All right, Mr. Greenway?
Sure.
Or Mr. Mountaineer?
Hey, first off, if I fulfilled my obligation, am I good? Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe you want to take 10 seconds and share with people why you're wearing
Yeah,
that
so
thing, you know?
I lost a bet. Tech was
Friendly
supposed to be
bet.
West Virginia.
A friendly bet.
Obviously, they didn't, and so Mr. Lowe, he didn't even, he didn't ride me all week like I would have rode him if Tech had won. But I felt like that was my obligation to fulfill our bet, and thank you. It was a friendly bet, and it was a good. Hopefully, you'll have to wear a Tech hat next year, and I hope I don't have to wear that again. Thank you, Mr. Brett. Yeah, I've got a couple things. One, I want to ask, and I'm going to bring you up now, Coy, because Coy had a question, and maybe we can get him with Dr. Stegall and Dr. Nicely after this about the contact tracing and some of those issues. And I probably should have asked you when we had the public portion to sign up and speak. But I think if you have a minute, we can answer those questions and get you taken care of, if that's okay.
Yes. Is that
Do you
something?
want to, is it okay, can you step out with Dr. Stegall, or did you want to?
Well, it's public speaking.
Yeah,
is,
public
is
speaking's
gone.
over, but,
Yeah.
and that's my fault for not letting you. But I'll share with the board what we've talked about, and then, yeah, thank you. And hey, Coy, I don't even know which school division you're in. Are you in? You are in Benton, okay. Thank you, thank you. Had some questions about, and that's my.
It's a good North Side alum right there, Mr.
Well,
Carter.
I think he did mention that he went to school with you, but I wasn't sure which district he was in when he called me. He's a realtor, so that's how I knew him. One thing I wanted to say was we talk about contact tracing, we talk about the nurses, and what a great job they're doing. I think what gets left out in all the administrative responsibilities these principals have, they are helping with that. They are a part of that contact tracing. And our principal, again, we've given something else for our people to do, and I want to thank the principals. I know they don't get the shout out a lot of times that needs to go out to them. So if you're listening out there, principals, we thank you for all you're doing with the contact tracing and with trying to keep our kids in school as well. We thank you for everything. I did hear on national news this morning before I left for work, I don't know if anybody else heard, I caught the end of it, and it was like nationally, 7 out of 8 of the last days, I think it was, the Delta variant has came down. We've broke. Did anybody else hear that, or am I the only one? That broke the curve or the height of this. So they're hoping that maybe we're coming down with some of the cases, which hopefully that's positive. I loved hearing that because at some point, there's a lot at risk here, and that's where I'm going to lead into Mr. Weimer's comments about gap assessments. I didn't know they were available. Is that something that Ben could send out to us where, how are they done? Are they done by schools? Are they done by just the gap assessments? How is it, or by grade level, or have you looked at them? I haven't seen them.
I can tell you what I know. Is that okay?
All right, absolutely.
Certain grade levels are given the test to see, where their performance level is relative to the grade that they're in. The first test, as I understand, has a lot to do with what they studied last year to see how much of that they're retaining. The next one that will be given in the winter months will be on what they're doing at grade level in preparation for the SOL test that's going to be given in the spring, and that will be a grade level test. And that will be only at the grade levels and course levels that are prescribed by the Virginia Department of Education.
Okay. So is that something that Ben could come back and give us an update, kind of in a fashion that gives us, and let me tell you why, and I've told Dr. Nicely already before this, I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. My fear is, and my fear a year and a half ago was, when this mess started, and I call it mess, absolutely 100%, I'm not going into that, I don't want you to think that. I'm just saying, and that meant when it started, my fear was not for the kids that have the ability, like the doctor said, his kids are homeschooled, I believe, or if they went to private school, or if you had the means to tutor, you're going to tutor those kids, right? Like I would have had that ability to be able to do that for my kids or grandkids, and maybe all of us here. But my fear, my angst, and my what kept me up at night as we went through this for the last year and a half are the poor children, are the single parents, are the kids that are. We have many homeless, in Roanoke County. You don't hear about that, but we do. Are the kids that just don't have the means that a lot of us have to give our children. So,
Can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
One of the things the state did get right when they sent the data back is it is specific to each child, and each test question, whether it's in math or reading or whatever, those are the two that they're testing, is specific to that child. So your economic situation doesn't play into the reporting. It's your performance. And once you get this, it's called student performance by question. Not the test question, but the SOL that's being tested by the question, every one of those you get an up or down. So a teacher can very quickly analyze that data, disaggregate the data, and when you do that, again, it has nothing to do with socioeconomic. It has everything to do with the teacher being prepared to meet the needs of kids. And that's why, the state put that out there. It was done hurriedly, and it was, it would have been nice if they'd have had, some accompanying documentation for parents so that they understood it more. But on the educator side, we're used to that, and we're used to getting it. But, with these gap tests, we're getting information now that we would have to wait till spring, under the traditional testing. So we're ahead of the game in terms of identifying who can't do what. And once you can identify who can't do what, the game's over, because it's a matter of how long can we engage students and teachers and parents, to help those children.
So, Mr. Weimer, you being an educator, I'll get you to help a little bit with this if I can, and you tell me if I'm overstirred or we need to do. So Dr. Nicely and I had this conversation, and we know we're stretching our foot. We know they're doing everything they can within the constraints of the time and the efforts and the new children that they've got to get these kids caught back up, right? We're not there. At least that's what I'm hearing. And that scares me to death. Now, I'm not saying that's Roanoke County yet. We're probably farther ahead of the game, right? But that's a societal issue, societal problem. And so what I would challenge each of us to do is to ask the questions, and Dr. Nicely and his group will obviously and have been doing that, and how to remediate this and bring these kids along. But my fear is, and we've got these ESSER funds, and we hear, I'm rambling now, but we have children that are being left behind. In 2021, let me just finish, and then I'll let you come back. 2021, that shouldn't be the case in Roanoke County. Now, we're having, it's hard to hire people. I mean, I get all that. I know that that's not your fault. We have to come up with ways to get them the resources to bring these kids up to speed. To get that, we're not saying, well, we're going to hold these kids back, because we'd be holding maybe in some cases half a class back and not moving them forward. But we can't just let them go, because when they get to a certain level and they don't understand some of the curriculum, we're going to lose them anyway. We can't let that happen. In many cases, that's the only opportunity a child has is this education, right? So we need to throw all the, whatever resources, money we need. If I'm hearing correctly, and I need to do a little more homework, that we need more substitutes. We know that. We've heard that. It can be critical at times. Are we using IAs to go into these classrooms? what we need to address that situation, give Dr. Nicely, Dr. McClung, Dr. Stegall, we need to give them the resources. And if that comes out of that ESSER fund, if we need to change some of that, maybe we need to double the pay of substitutes for now, we can revisit it in a year. Whatever we need to do, this is not the time to sit back and say, well, we're doing better than most people, because there's still 10 or 15% of those kids that are not where they need to be. And I just want to bring that, Dr. Nicely obviously has done a wonderful job and continues to do a wonderful job. This is not a message for him. It's a message for us that we need to give more support, whatever that, if we need to go to the Board of Supervisors, if we need to curtail capital spending, whatever it is, we can't leave those kids behind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To your point, I no longer use the word testing in my vocabulary, because testing is where you give students an opportunity to share what they know, and then you go forward to the next piece of content or the next skill or whatever. Assessment is what this is a gap assessment. It's the starting point. It's not the end. Knowing what they can do and can't do is the starting point. And if we are not picking up on that, and I agree with you, these funds that are coming in from the feds, when you read a lot of the literature that I'm reading, there's a lot of money there for the kind of remediation that, is going to be necessary. And it's not going to be done in 6 weeks, 6 months. It may take a year or two before some of these students get caught up. So it's not a short-term fix. It's a long-term strategy to get them to where they need to be. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying. With regard to funding, they say that money can't buy you happiness. Well, but it can buy you a lot of things that can make you happy. And having teachers and tutors and all these other things that may be necessary, that's important. And I agree with you on that.
Thank you. And I challenge us to come to the next work session and give tools to give these to get these kids up to speed, to get them so that, especially at the elementary level, where we don't want them to get to third grade and not be able to read, not to be able to write or to critically think. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. London?
Thank you. Well said, Mr. Greenwell. You made some very good points there. Had the opportunity to attend the apprenticeship event last week over at the Salem Red Sox game, and I just wanted to thank Jason, Sir, and Mark, and Christian. Just an outstanding event to see where that has come since 2017 when I first got on the board, the growth when we had one company and maybe 5 interns to now we've got 10 or 11 companies and 50 students working with different companies across the board. It's just been such a great job, and I know they put a lot of effort into that, and want to thank this board and Dr. Nicely for giving them the tools to do that. So I know it's made a difference in the community for those businesses that have been involved, and while COVID may have slowed down those numbers last year just a little bit, Jason assured me that those numbers will be headed back up, and hopefully we've got some more businesses that want to hire some of our students. So, Chris, nice to see the demolition work over there on the north side tennis courts. Glad that that's taken place. And then I know October is Bullying Prevention Month, and our staff, Dr. McClung, Dr. Nicely, all our principals and counselors and teachers have done such a great job to promote that. I hope, and with all the virtual learning and online learning that we're doing, I'm not sure if this year it will include cyberbullying or anything along those lines, and maybe it already does. I had read that it can start, cyberbullying can start even before the age of 10, and based on some of the things I've seen online recently, it looks like it can continue into its 70s. So other than that, I don't have anything else.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to echo with Mr. Linden's remarks. I was not able to be, I was out of town, so I wasn't able to attend the event for VCAT. But it certainly it has grown. It's gone from the Water Authority and Mike Altizer pushing that for interns to where it is now, and it certainly continues to grow, and we want to compliment Jason Sir and his folks for that, for continually working towards growth of that program. So I'd also like to thank Mr. Lowe. Sometimes he's low-key, but the thing unless he's talking about West Virginia,
Yeah.
Mountaineers, but he certainly gets the job done. And I know I had an incident here recently, and Mr. Lowe was right on top of it to make that resolution, and I thank you very much, Mr. Lowe, because you're a man of many hats, and we certainly, I know every one of us have called you and said, hey, we got this, and you don't blow up at us and say no way, or you just in your own way, you get it done. So we thank you, I really do. I did ask for those ADM numbers because they were updated as far as August 31st, and Dr. Nicely got those out. We thank you. We've certainly gone up from our August 31st number of 13,218 to 13,247. And this is based on our state funding, and we went up 39. We usually know that it's going to happen in September, that we'll pick up some more, and I was glad to see that we didn't drop. That was the main thing. So, we continue to want those numbers because it's based on what we budget. We budgeted less, 13,087, so that's a good thing where we have more than what we budgeted, so we'll know we don't over budget. We don't overestimate what we do. So you'll have more information with that in October as we go through our budget process. But, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My pleasure, Mr. Ray. All right. So, I just want to thank, I was at Salem Stadium last week as well with Mr. Linden and Mr. Greenway. I want to thank Mr. Linden for being our substitute photographer that evening. So, Mr. Greenway certainly did. We were afraid we were going to break the camera, so appreciate you doing that. It was great to see so many parents and members of our business community, supporting, and thank you to the Roanoke County Salem Chamber for helping with the event as well. Thanks to Mr. Lionberger and the Education Foundation, we had a successful golf tournament on Monday. I think that is our biggest fundraiser for the Education Foundation. So just want to thank you. Dr. Nicely was there selling prizes and raffle tickets. So thank you so much.
He wasn't giving golf lessons?
So he thought he'd be better at selling raffle tickets. So it might have been a wise decision. And then lastly, Dr. Nicely and I were invited. We got to spend Wednesday or Tuesday. The weeks run together. But we were at Hidden Valley Middle School. We got invited to Mrs. Hodges' English class there on Tuesday. They were reading a book that revolved around some, school board and some issues at a school up north, and and superintendent. And they had a very nice list of prepared questions about what the superintendent does and what the school board does, and it was nice to get out, in the school and have some give and take with the classroom. So I do appreciate that. So, and as a lot of us have said, look, we know that there, some learning loss took place last year. Fortunately, our numbers are significantly higher than state averages, but still a little bit less than where we were. I don't expect us to solve these problems in 6 weeks. I mean, that's not going to happen, but I will tell the public what this board has done is, we've allocated, between elementary, between middle, and between high school, we've allocated over $605,000 for remediation, $906,000 for each of the next 3 years to have a permanent substitute teacher at each Roanoke County school. They can also assist with with remediation. So we are certainly taking the steps, and, for the nice thing, testing is not the end all be all. I know it's a measure, but, we are fortunate, that, for instance, our third graders this year, they did benefit from a full school year last week, 5 days. I think that really helps when they get to that third grade level. But, learning loss is real. I feel like we've got a good plan in place, and we've allocated some, a good chunk of those, ESSER funds and the other COVID funds to go for that. But there's always more we can do, and I have no doubt that our staff is up to the challenge. Add that, another hat that they can wear to their duties. So, thank you, staff, for everything you do, fellow board members, and happy birthday to Mr. Linden's wife. Meeting adjourned.
Now it's on.